Today is Wednesday, March 5th, 2020. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, she drops out of the presidential race, but she is not decided that she is going to endorse anyone. There's a major push to save Nathaniel Woods from execution tonight in Alabama. We'll tell you why and how you can help. The Florida Senate is poised to pass a bill to make Floridians aware of the 1920 Election Day riots. Oh, yeah. The author of the bill joins us. Also, Prince George's County Police Officer Michael Owen has been indicted for shooting a handcuffed man. And in New York, a plainclothes police officer harasses a black man for being in the park while black, and then he is jumped by half a dozen police officers. And yes, another crazy-ass white woman in Indiana refuses service from a black woman working at the Olive Garden, and the restaurant agrees? It's time to bring the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin!
All right, I tried to tell you. I told y'all Senator Elizabeth Warren was going to drop out of the presidential campaign after coming in third in her home state of Massachusetts on Tuesday, fourth in Oklahoma, where she grew up, and fourth in Texas, where she went to college. Now, again, today, she spoke to at a news conference, realizing there was no path forward. Here's what she had to say.
So I announced this morning that I am suspending my campaign for president. I say this with a deep sense of gratitude for every single person who got in this fight, every single person who tried on a new idea, every single person who just moved a little in their notion of what a president of the United States should look like. I will not be running for president in 2020, but I guarantee I will stay in the fight for the hardworking folks across this country who've gotten the short end of the stick over and over. That's been the fight of my life, and it will continue to be so.
All right, folks, joining us right now on our panel, Dr. Greg Carr, Chair, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University, Reese Colbert. Is it Colbert or Colbert?
It's Colbert.
See, there you go.
But I like Colbert too, so that works.
Girl, pick.
Well, it's a married name, so I don't have an I'm not overly sentimental about it.
Damn, really?
I mean, it's not like I've had
Really?
the name my whole life, so I like Colbert, but I also like Colbert either way. They both have flavor to them.
Wow, that's cold.
My husband isn't watching right now, so it's like.
Damn, okay, but he probably see the replay.
Forever.
Yeah, precisely. Of
I
course,
love my last name.
Reese
however you
Colbert with
pronounce.
Black Women Views. So again, look, this was gonna happen. Bottom line is, when you have that kind of showing on Tuesday, it is hard to make a case why you stay in. I think when you look at all of the candidates, I personally believe that out of all of them, she was the strongest in terms of laying out her policy. But the bottom line is this here. She talked about it, looked at lanes. She thought there were more than two lanes. She said, reality is there were only two, the Joe Biden lane and the Bernie Sanders lane. And that's really what contributed to her not being able to gain some traction.
Yeah, and I think that in the last couple of weeks, she really struggled with finding a message that she thought was going to resonate. I think she dropped the unity thing, the unity consensus candidate. She dropped the whole I'm trying to get big money out of politics things. She was kind of lurching from message to message. And I think that just kind of confused voters when they had the most amount of attention on the campaign. So I think that if she had stuck with some of her earlier messages, driving home the wealth tax, if she even talked more about student loan debt. I remember one of the earlier conversations I had with people, that was a huge factor in their support. People even said, I'm a single issue voter and it's student loan debt. And I barely heard anything about her from student loan debt. So I think that she lacked consistency in her messaging in her final, couple of weeks, and I think that hurt her.
Greg, bottom line is this here. I think when you look at this campaign, when you talk about going back and forth in terms of, where do you try to fit in, one of the issues is that I still contend she ran 4 years too late. I believe that she was at her zenith in 2015. She should have ran against Hillary Clinton. She didn't. Bernie Sanders ran. He really established himself as a strong progressive, built his coalition, and it's hard for her to compete against that coalition that when he had it in place for 4 years.
Yeah, Roland, you said something a couple of months ago as the polls were coming out and the imaginary head-to-heads between a Democratic candidate and Trump, and Warren didn't look in those polls as if she were the strongest candidate. He said, I don't pay attention to polls yet. We got to get closer to the election. And, I think the candidacy of Elizabeth Warren really does expose the vagaries of the electoral process. She and Sanders are not only natural allies. I mean, if the talk is to be believed, Sanders jumped in 4 years ago in part because Warren did not jump in. And had she jumped in, it could have been President Elizabeth Warren. She's clearly head and shoulders above the bottom. This is a college professor who, in the space of less than a decade, is running for the presidency and is a senator from Massachusetts. I think what we see now, whether it be because she's a woman, whether it be because she, as you said, didn't really keep her lane identified and something that had to do with the staff she hired, whether it be, and I remember the Saturday morning on the front page of New York Times when Buttigieg, who should never have been in a presidential primary, do anything, basically forced her, along with others, to try to put a price tag on her Medicare for All option, and that's when you saw her numbers begin to slide. And now we're left with Joe Biden, and really there isn't that much gap between most of the candidates. If Biden's talking about a public option, that's the thing he and Barack Obama gave up in the first month of negotiating the Affordable Care Act. Warren was able to lay all this out. And so if the Democrats do retake the presidency and Elizabeth Warren stays in the Senate, I hope very seriously that the Democratic Party will look to her for some leadership if they can flip the Senate and maybe even replace Chuck Schumer. That's what's on social media now. I mean, because Warren is a formidable force and not to be ignored.
But I do want to clear something up, though, because I don't think that she was forced to put a price tag on Medicare for All. I think what happened was she refused to admit that you're going to raise taxes in order to pay for Medicare for All. Bernie Sanders said it on the debate stage, your taxes are going to go up if you make over $29,000 a year. She said, she absolutely refused to just say that taxes will go up. So she came up with this elaborate plan to show how she was going to pay for it without raising taxes. All she had to do was say that taxes will go up, but your costs will go down. And so she walked herself into that.
But she did fall into the rabbit hole of putting a price tag on it.
Right.
And what Sanders has done is every time he's been asked, he's always pivoted to, look, here's the big picture.
Right.
Look, this is how much we're paying. And so he sticks with that, and he's never bogged down. And look, even when Brianna Gray, his spokesman, was on the show, she said, well, we really don't want to put a price tag on it. And so, again, I think the specificity of Elizabeth Warren caught up with her.
Exactly.
I mean, the reality is, and this is, I think, what is hard for, this is what I think is hard for really smart people when you run for president, that you have to understand that a lot of people are not necessarily looking for specifics.
Right.
They're looking for grand themes. They're looking for things that, for me to latch on to. If you look at Sanders, he is speaking to structural changes in this whole system. What Joe Biden is speaking to is normalcy.
Right.
He's speaking to character, values, family, those things. Those are not policy deals.
No.
And see, I think a lot of activists, I think a lot of political reporters demand those things, but voters are demanding those things.
No, they're not.
And that's the piece where I think a lot of people, you have to be able to connect with an audience in I think, in a different way. Does it mean that you totally ignore policy? No.
No.
But I think the reality is that also was one of Senator Harris's problems. I think that was one of Senator Booker's problems. In terms of how do I connect with that voter where I'm comfortable, they trust me, they can follow me, And Warren was sort of just sort of caught in that space. I mean, she would do great in town halls. She would really lay those things out.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's where she got caught. I think she got caught in terms of I need to have people think in a much bigger way and feel totally different as opposed to plan. I got a plan for that.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think also that she also chose the wrong big themes. She chose big structural change, which is really pretty much occupied almost entirely by Bernie Sanders. And then the big structural change she talked about just didn't really resonate with people. I don't think that a majority of Americans are anti-billionaires or even anti-millionaires. And so driving home her point, I feel like her point was more so of like, you know, these are the bad guys and I'm going to take on the bad guys. And I just don't think that was really a message that resonates with as many people versus Bernie Sanders. I don't think that he's definitely like anti-this, anti-establishment, anti-this. But I will say that Bernie Sanders, as much as I do not like Bernie Sanders, he has a good balance of character and themes. You know, what is it? Not me, us. Yeah. You know, so he has that thing going, and then he also has two very key signature, easily identifiable policies, which is Medicare for all and student loan debt.
But Greg, the thing is this here: when you look at what Elizabeth Warren had, which she really did not lock and load on, and the video is out there. She fought Joe Biden on the bankruptcy bill.
Yeah.
She fought Tim Geithner.
She sure did.
She fought Larry Summers.
Yes,
she fought all of them when it came to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
That's right.
And so I think and this is the thing that I think people don't understand. The Democratic Party, they're saying, I need a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
I need a fighter against this dude.
Yeah, against Trump.
And even though people say, well, that's not Biden, actually it is.
Yeah.
And I think by her not saying consistently, Joe, when that bankruptcy bill came up, you were the reason why you can't put student loan debt when you file for bankruptcy. You were the reason for this. And I fought you on these. Y'all feel free to go to YouTube and look at the video.
That's right.
She didn't do that. And so then it would have been, for instance, $12 billion was returned to taxpayers because of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
That's right.
It's $12 billion.
That's right.
And to me, you got to drill that constantly, and say, I stood up. And she didn't say, not only did I stand up against Republicans, I stood up against Democrats.
That's right.
I stood up against people in the administration who did not want this. And we still got it done, and that's how we save $12 billion. Those are things that you're sitting at home and you're like, damn, first $12 billion?
Right.
Really? Predatory lenders. And then you pivot. Trump has allowed them back in.
Yes.
He's allowed the petty lenders back in. Those are things that resonate, I think, on MLK Street, Main Street, whatever street you're talking about.
So Roland, you just laid that out. Clean, plain. Anybody watching follows that. Somebody watching right now and saying, what? Damn. But we all know that Elizabeth Warren is not a dumb person. Again, the intellectual architecture of consumer protection was hers. But what we also know is that the Obama administration sacrificed her. She wouldn't even be in the United States Senate if Obama and them had backed her and allowed her to chair that very commission that she created the architecture for.
They did not. They didn't want to fight.
That's exactly right.
Mitch McConnell said, if it's one thing that's perfectly clear, the banks don't want her.
That's right.
And we don't want her.
And we don't want her.
Yeah.
The Obama folks were like, okay, we're gonna avoid the fight.
That's exactly.
I was saying then, no. You take the fight.
Exactly.
Even if you lose the vote, you take the fight.
That's right. And so I guess, and that really is of a piece of what your observation leads to. This wasn't an intellectual choice by Warren. It was a political choice. Mm-hmm. And of course, we know that she had a number of people from the quote unquote establishment Dems, the Obama administration and folks like that, as political advisors for her. So then my question to you and
Are you talking
you,
about
Reese,
this
as
campaign?
well.
They were
for
political?
Warren.
Okay.
I'm saying, do you think that her choice not to go after Joe Biden was in fact a political calculation so that she didn't come out as attacking what some voters may perceive to be the Obama administration?
She tried to play nice.
She was exactly.
That was her brand.
But she also
for
wouldn't go after
14
Sanders.
months. Yeah.
She wouldn't go after anybody.
That's very
her
true.
brand for
Until
14
it got
months-
to the point where it's too late.
The only person she went after was
flip-flopped on
Bloomberg.
it. Yeah. Well, that's
And
the
she
problem.
bodied him. But
She spent 14 months saying, I want to attack my fellow Democrats. She did it on the slow. She did her, on the slide. She had her subliminal messages. And then when she lost Iowa and she lost New Hampshire, then all of a sudden she comes out on the attack. It was do or die in Nevada. And I think she kind of had no choice. But the problem is, again, you kind of muddle your messaging. Are you the unity candidate? Are you the consensus candidate? Are you the person who doesn't attack Dems? Or are you the person that's going to go toe-to-toe? I don't think that there's a problem with attacking anybody. I think you got to
Right.
knock somebody's ass out.
Well, to your point,
but
yeah, that's true.
you had your definition this whole time. Bernie is my friend, and then all of a sudden Bernie said I couldn't be president. He's sexist, and then he
Right.
turned around and so like you kind of are flipping around a little bit.
Again, to what y'all raising, I mean, politics is not about who's the smartest and who has the best plan.
Right.
And it's really tragic because out of all the candidates, and I include Harris and Booker, Warren's vision of how race and class intersect was, in my estimation, the clearest, particularly near the end. Oh, yeah, when she was talking about women, and oh, yeah, when you start talking about prenatal care, we start talking about black women.
Kamala Harris had the first maternal care.
Kamala Harris is, of course, very bright, but let's be very clear. And my point is that none of that has to do with winning an election. Because if you listen to Elizabeth Warren, you would think that people with a taste test, you take everybody's personality out of it, listen to it. Pete Buttigieg shouldn't be on the same stage as Elizabeth Warren. Even Klobuchar shouldn't be on the. She was very clear.
Wait a minute.
But here's the deal.
We're talking about Amy Klobuchar.
In Massachusetts, 1/3 of educated white women voted for her
Voted for who?
in her home state.
Oh, just 1/3.
Just 1/3.
That's exactly right.
I mean, and so, and also I think we have to deal with this here. And this is the reality. This nation, not just men,
It's not just men, you're
but
right.
in this nation, men and women are not ready for a woman president.
That's right. Even though Hillary Clinton won the popular vote,
They're not ready.
they're not ready.
They're not.
Because otherwise
Men
Elizabeth
and
Warren
women.
would still be in this race. That's
It is
exactly right.
stunning to listen.
Kamala Harris would still be in this race. That's exactly right.
Reese, it is stunning to listen to women who talk about women power, who talk about feminism, who talk about these things, and completely ignore women.
Yeah.
And go as if they don't even exist.
Yeah.
And go right to men.
I have this frustration as a Kamala Harris supporter. We're all black girl magic, black excellence. Everybody was all team rah-rah Kamala. And then when she runs for president, it's like Bird Box. I'm not seeing the black woman.
Wow.
So I'm like, well, where is that same energy? And I would think that white women have that same complaint. I've seen a lot of feedback. Sexism is the reason why Elizabeth Warren lost. Well, y'all need to check your white woman cousins. I'm gonna have a conversation with my black woman cousins, and y'all need to have a conversation with your white woman cousins, child, because the votes are not adding up. We have the political capital, we have the capacity, if we put our votes where our mouths are, and yet that we choose not to do that. Now, I think people have a variety of calculations that are not necessarily anti-woman. It could just be that they feel like this person wasn't qualified, whatever. But white women talk to your cousins, black women, I'm gonna talk to my black women cousins, and we have a bigger fight in our hands because we have the race and the gender part. But I agree with you. It's not sexism and the not being ready for a president, a woman president is across the gender line.
We talk about conversations. Bernie Sanders was supposed to give a major speech in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi. Then he decided to cancel that speech in Mississippi. He now is going to be focusing on campaigning in Michigan. Greg, what does that say? Here's a candidate who got crushed by the black vote on Super Tuesday. If you look at the polling data right now, he's down huge in Mississippi. Joe Biden has a 49-point lead in the polls in Florida.
Yeah.
Sanders, when he got asked about Rachel Maddow last night, and I'll play it in a second, he pivoted to people of color, how he did with people of color in California. She said, no, I'm talking about black people. And you're talking about an issue there. I don't know how in the world Bernie Sanders thinks he can concede the black vote to Joe Biden and win a nomination.
I don't either. I mean, the Mississippi decision is interesting, particularly because when you go to Jackson, Mississippi, with Chokwe Antar Lumumba, his sister Rukia, the Jackson Rising movement, that is absolutely Sanders territory. I'm talking about younger black people. And as you pointed out the other night, and again last night, you know, the numbers of younger black people who have to be recruited in to make this Sanders strategy work simply haven't shown up. And in part because, in fact, more people have shown up to vote. You talked about Virginia the night before last. But to cancel that type of conversation in Jackson, Mississippi, where they were talking about cooperative land, they're talking about multiracial coalition. That is natural Sanders territory. Seems to me that they must be scrambling now to try to figure out how to recalibrate. It could very well be that no candidate still has the majority. We got another Super Tuesday coming up next week, and after that, the week after, you got more states. But if Sanders doesn't come up with some type of strategy that reaches out to those black voters and avoid something that I really am frightened about at this point, which is this separation out between black and brown voters. I mean, in other words, we got to talk coalition politics now, which is why it's very interesting that Warren has kept her powder dry and hadn't said who she will endorse, if anyone. I'm hoping that what they're trying to do is really think through what they want to do next, but I think that was a tactical error. He could have gone to Jackson, Mississippi and made up some ground if he had surrounded himself with those young people and made a statement about race.
It made no sense whatsoever. Again, and they were touting this whole deal. And so first I want to play this here. This is Bernie Sanders last night with Rachel Maddow on MSNBC in their exclusive interview.
Ask you about the South. I mean, in 2016, you ran basically equal with Hillary Clinton everywhere in the country except the South, where she really ran the table against you. That seems to be happening again. You didn't reach even 20% of the African-American vote anywhere in the South. In North Carolina, you actually did worse. You did 19% with African-American voters in 2016. That dropped 2 points last night. What is going wrong with your campaign when it comes to competing in the South and competing specifically for black voters?
Well, let me just give you the other side of the story, is that in California, if my memory is correct, we received 39% of the votes of people of color, which were Latinos, Asian Americans, and African Americans. If I am not mistaken, I haven't studied these results, we probably won the young people African American vote, probably in all of those states.
But in California, you're being well outpaced by Joe Biden among black voters.
Well, we are winning among people of color in a very significant degree.
Let's talk about black voters, though, specifically, because it has been a persistent problem. You knew it was a problem in 2016. It might have cost you the nomination then, but it hasn't gotten better.
Yeah, well, we're running against somebody who has touted his relationship with Barack Obama for 8 years. Barack Obama is enormously popular in this country in general and in the African-American community. Running against Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton was enormously popular. So I don't think, if you look at some of the national polls, in fact, there have been some polls recently that we were running ahead of Biden in the African-American community. So it's not that I'm not popular. You know, Biden is running, you know, with his ties to Obama, and that's working well.
But let me be specific. I mean, in 2016, you knew that was a problem.
In 2016, we were running against Hillary Clinton. I was virtually unknown. Now we're running against Barack Obama's vice president, who was very, very popular. What I'm saying to you, Rachel, is that if you look at the polling out there, I am not unpopular in the African-American community.
Are you satisfied with your numbers among African-American voters?
Of course not. We want to do better. We're doing very, very well with the Latino community. We're doing very well with the Asian-American community. And we have to do better. So we're going to try to do better. We have a great group of surrogates who are out there working hard on this thing. I think we will do better. I think the vote in the North will be different than the vote in the South. But, you know, we are, you know, we're running against some tough competition there.
Now, when you hear that, when you hear Sanders, North versus South.
I heard that dog whistle up in there.
It goes back to 2016.
It sounds
when his white candidates were talking about, well, we're not going to win those states in November. They're not going to matter. Michael Moore said the exact same thing. South Carolina won't matter come November.
You know what? His folks are on that message. You had Mayor Bill de Blasio, who was on Morning Joe, calling black voters, saying that they only have so much information.
Yeah, it's true. Black Americans are no different than the rest of Americans. They're not voting based on reading the policies. They're not voting based on considering the candidates and thinking about the policy. They're voting based on impulse and what limited media saturation. Oh, let's just be candid.
No,
I mean, this is Roland Martin unfiltered.
I don't agree.
My point is this. Bernie Sanders, when you hear Bernie Sanders talk the way he's talking to Rachel Maddow there, I think it's a little disingenuous. In some ways, no. I'm talking about, Rachel Maddow pressing him, because, Rachel Maddow's stock and trade now is that she's apparently the intellectual on television, which is hilarious to me. But Sanders, in some ways, is in some ways the accidental presidential candidate. Again, talk about 4 years ago. If Warren had run, Sanders wasn't going to run.
But let's talk about his black issue.
No. Well, his black issue is black people. It's not Bernie Sanders. No. Let me be very clear. We got to be a little bit better than just reaction sometimes. Well, let me be clear. Black people made a calculated choice on Tuesday.
Right.
They're saying which one of these candidates is white people going to vote for.
That's part of the equation.
I think that is the central part of the calculation, because you can't base it on what the candidate is saying. Otherwise, Joe Biden will be polling at near 0%. If you have listened to Joe Biden, and of course, our grandchildren it'll be our grandchildren's generation, but we can have an intelligent conversation about the Obama administration. Let's be very clear. This is the politics of appearance. Bernie Sanders is in some ways an accidental presidential candidate who is the head of a movement, because he's been talking this. Well, he's the head of a movement. I'm sorry. He's connected to a thrust in politics that goes back through Jesse Jackson to Operation Breadbasket to Martin Luther King. Again, but we're not talking about any of that. We're talking about the politics of an election driven by people who watch television, listen to radio, and are voting with their hearts rather than really sitting there. And I'm not talking black, white, brown, or any others. I'm saying Bernie Sanders is a man out of joint, in part because he's not part of that rhythm. And I'm saying, as a consequence, he's probably not going to be the nominee. My concern is that Trump gets reelected, because if Bernie Sanders is out of rhythm, I'm going to tell you who's in pure rhythm with this kind of, not low information, this kind of visceral reaction, tribalistic politics in America. The man who has his hand on that isn't Joe Biden, it's Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who realizes that it's not about the truth, it's not about facts. This is about a primal scream. Otherwise, now Elizabeth Warren, poor white from Oklahoma, former Republican. Oh, well, let's think about her biography.
A woman middle class.
Yeah, okay. My point, exactly. End of story. We're not talking about things in terms of substance. We're talking about things in terms of reaction. Okay. And Bernie Sanders would never be the president of the United States if he's waiting on people for them to understand that student debt forgiveness, that Medicare for all are policies that are not only not radical, and not only won't transform the American polity, but are policies that will allow for enough of a redistribution of wealth in this society to continue the capitalist enterprise. He's not a communist. He's not a socialist. But that doesn't matter, because on TV they say he is, and people are scared, and so let's vote for somebody else. That's really the end of the story.
I don't agree with you on that. I think that
on what part?
Okay, I'm gonna break it down. Let's talk about the policy part. I think that people are pragmatic. They're looking at the fact that at this point Mitch McConnell controls the Senate, and if we pull off a miracle, we will get a bare majority in the Senate. We will not get a filibuster-proof majority. We do not have the votes to pass to get rid of the filibuster. Right. Even Democrats don't want to get rid of the filibuster. And so the problem with Bernie Sanders is Bernie Sanders doesn't have a plan B with his proposals.
So you're talking about policy. You're not talking about the substance. You're talking about the politics.
But hold on one second.
I'm just asking this.
But what I'm saying is that he is not presenting something to a large swath of the American people that is saying, I can get this done. He has 30 years in Congress where he's only passed 7 bills in 30 years. And so he just doesn't have a record of accomplishment. His policies are pretty much unrealistic. They sound good in theory, but that's not something that people who are really evaluating what can possibly be done are going to say, yeah, let's vote for him.
What are you basing that on?
I'm basing it on the fact.
I mean, we passed, we didn't do anything, but a federal pension was passed. It's called Social Security.
Right. But
they called Franklin Roosevelt a socialist during that time. Federal deposit insurance.
Right.
The idea, for example, that the farmers got subsidies. So I'm saying that it really does depend. I understand, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying the politics of the situation is what's driving these decisions, not the substance.
Yes.
And Bernie Sanders attempting to talk about substance politically, he's just probably not well fit to run for president.
But I also don't think that, I mean, yes, his policies to me are unrealistic. I don't have a substantive problem with his policies, though.
Yeah, I don't think most of us do.
And I don't think that a lot of people who are not voting for him have a substantive problem with his policies.
I agree with
I think there's a pragmatic problem with his policies.
I agree with you there.
And so I don't think that that is low information. I don't think that there's anything to deride people for that. I just think that people are making a different political calculation.
What about low vision? In other words, are people, because imagine what Martin King, who was never a politician, in all fairness, would say at this moment. If Dr. King were here, for example, would Dr. King say, I think we should have a society where everybody has health care, where everybody is able to build a life because they have resources? I just wonder.
But I think that that is a message that most Democrats can agree on. I don't think that people voting for Joe Biden say no to universal health care. I think that people are voting for Joe Biden say, I want my private insurance. I don't want Medicare for all. I think they're saying that a public option sounds more reasonable.
They don't want their private insurance. They want health care. And I guess what I'm saying is, and hopefully, Roland, I know you're going to talk to him many more times between now and the election. It'll be very interesting to hear Reverend Barber again.
I love Reverend Barber.
These issues.
Yes.
Well, that's true, but I mean, if we ask Reverend Barber understands pragmatism, but he also understands that broader vision. And of the candidates remaining in the field, the one closer to what Reverend Barber has been talking about, fusion politics has been talking about, is probably in terms of policy, Bernie Sanders.
Policy, I agree.
But we have to be pragmatic. We're not disagreeing. I mean, and I do think that if Biden continues, and I think he will, to propose the public option. And I think if he continues to do that, what people may realize is that that's not Medicare for all, but that's a quantum leap. That's a quantum leap. And in the general election, Donald Trump and them will run against the public option as if it is Medicare for all.
That is also true.
And at that point, we're going to have to make a very clear challenge and push to educate voters because people are voting literally against the possibility of extending their lives. Because the Republican Party wants to end all forms of health care that aren't profit-driven.
I agree.
And Biden is not on that side. I think Biden is, of course, closer to Sanders. That's why I think Warren was really the bridge. And to finish, as you say, Roland, if she had run 4 years ago, I think Elizabeth Warren could have beaten Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders would never have been a candidate for president. And we may be in a very different place now, but the miscalculation, we're the ones that are going to end up paying the cost.
And I think just the last point that I want to make is I just want to be clear. By my standards, what I see, I don't see that people are low information. I think that people have a variety of factors that go into their calculation, factors that may be weighted differently. Some people weigh vision very highly, and some people weigh pragmatism very highly. The vision people are over here with Bernie. The pragmatism people are over here with Biden. There is nothing wrong with being a vision person, and there's nothing wrong with being a pragmatist.
I think that's probably accurate.
Then I think we can agree on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Bernie Sanders actually released this commercial, which is quite interesting. Watch this.
Has the virtue of saying exactly what he believes, great authenticity, great passion, and is fearless. Bernie served on the Veterans Committee and gotten bills done. I think people are ready for a call to action. They want honest leadership who cares about them. They want somebody who's going to fight for them. And they will find it in Bernie. That's right, feel the burn.
I'm Bernie Sanders, and I approve this message.
Bernie is somebody who has the virtue of saying exactly what he believes, great authenticity, great passion, and is fearless. Bernie served on the Veterans Committee and gotten bills done.
Somebody had actually somebody had posted a video of Nina Turner going off on other candidates for running commercials, linking themselves with the first black president. What do you make of Bernie Sanders running a commercial that essentially says Obama's endorsed me?
Roland, as you said the other night, if you're going to expand the base, you better bring them out to vote. Clearly, that commercial is targeted to my mother's generation, to your auntie's generation. It is targeted to those people who are voting. Talk about a whistle. It's basically, Obama's my friend too, vote for me, which means the older voters. That, to me, signals that Bernie Sanders is trying to hedge his bets. If you can't bring those younger people, because I'll tell you who that commercial is not dedicated to, It's not dedicated to those young black and brown activists and white activists who look at the Obama administration as a neoliberal, Republican-light administration that gave up the prescription drug benefit, that gave up the public option, that certainly was preferable to anything. We got stuck with the bill for that, which is Donald Trump. But that commercial is not to them. Bernie Sanders now, scrambling for some triangulation, is attempting to reach out to those people that Jim Clyburn stuck the red, black, and green flag up for, and they saluted Joe Biden. And he's trying to figure out if he can reach a few of them while continuing to try to expand the base. Ultimately, if this is a turnout primary, the way it's trending, it looks like he expanded the younger people voting a little, but he expanded the people who vote all the time grew by even greater numbers.
Right.
So Bernie Sanders is now scrambling. And I think Nina Turner, Bree Joy, all of those black people who are working with Bernie Sanders have either, to the point you raised the other night, they've got to get these young people, these younger people, off of social media, off of battling and attacking, and bring their ass to the polls. If they are smart, they'll listen to what you said, but it may be too little too late. I think that's just Sanders trying to pick off a few of these mothers and grandmothers and grandfathers and see can he come cobble them together with a few 32-year-olds. No question. Because right now, he's just trying to come up with, and I don't know that it's going to work. Probably not.
Reese, what do you make of the commercial?
Well, we've determined that commercials alone cannot win you over voters, right? Because Bloomberg.
Right.
But I just think it's really interesting because there have been multiple edits. There's the Nina Turner edit of this commercial with her audio over that video. You should not be using Obama, the black president, as a prop. There's another edit of Bernie Sanders' audio where he was trashing the hell out of Obama and talking about how there's this great disappointment with Obama and all this other kind of stuff. And so I think that it's total pandering. And when you line up this commercial with the fact that he canceled an opportunity to talk to black people directly, when he did not show up in Selma, Alabama, and he was instead breaking up Public Enemy in Los Angeles, it's not going to fly. Black people, I know that the Bernie camp thinks that black people are low information.
They are.
They think that.
Because they're Americans.
But guess what?
Not because they're black.
People have enough information to see through that commercial.
Yeah.
And you referenced the Nina video. This is what Nina Turner, of course, who is the chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign, previously said about such commercials.
I bet you half of these people that are trying to use the proximity to the black president wasn't supporting him in 2008. He wasn't a candidate of choice in 2008. But now all of a sudden, because he is very popular in this country, whether you're Democrat or Republican, he's just a popular figure. Now they want to use him as a prop. They should not be using the black president as their prop to try to seduce the African-American community. Stand on your own record. President Barack Obama is not running for president in 2020.
And who are you referring to? Are you talking about Vice President Biden?
Vice President, I mean, look at all the candidates, all of them. I mean, but yeah, Vice President Biden, you got Mayor Bloomberg of all people who trampled on the rights of black people and brown people in his city, airing commercials with the President Obama's image. Don't do that. Stand on your record. They can't stand on their record. So they want to prop up use the black president as a prop to try to prove to the black voters especially, not exclusively, but especially, that somehow they down, where they not.
Reese, didn't Bernie Sanders want to primary Obama in 2012?
Actually, he did, now that you mention it. Also, what's interesting is that particular video footage that they used was from a meeting that Bernie Sanders had with President Obama in 2016, where President Obama explicitly did not want to endorse Bernie. And he was actually trying to convince Bernie, say, look, you don't have a path. Can you drop the hell out? And Bernie said, no, I'm going to keep going. And so it's so ironic that they're using this video. You should have more video of you and Obama if you guys are buddies and Obama was president, plus you guys were senators together. And yet you choose a video that's maybe the most clean they could have him. He has a nice suit on. Obama has a nice suit. It's real nice imagery. But that's just, the picture is very deceiving.
Greg, all candidates do this. Yep. Everybody wants to have linkage. Mike Bloomberg had a very similar commercial. But the reality is, if you're going to criticize Mike Bloomberg for doing the very same commercial that Bernie Sanders did, guess what? All's fair in love and war.
Yeah, well, I think this is a great example of exactly what you just said. Nina Turner is a purist. Bernie Sanders is a purist. As you often say, do you want to be right or you want to win? And at the end of the day, Joe Biden's entire presidential campaign can be reduced to one phrase: I'm Barack Obama's friend. Now, if they really wanted to play in the mud, they would create a series of commercials with what Joe Biden said about Barack Obama during the primaries. He's the first articulate, bright, clean. So, oh, this is Joe Biden. If they really wanted to attack Joe Biden, they would go back to when he was the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee and muted Anita Hill. If they want to go after the black women's vote, Nina Turner, I mean, now, you want to really get in this thing, get in a knife fight. But let's be very clear. Joe Biden isn't the enemy. Right. Donald Trump is getting ready to replace the whole federal bench. Part of the Sanders dilemma at this point is that while he is not a Democrat, he is certainly not a white supremacist, and he's not with Trump. So if he wants to stay in this primary and compete, he's going to have to figure out a way to try to expand his base, reach some of these voters that didn't vote for him, without so bloodying Joe Biden that he can't win in the fall. And so he's still going to pull his punches.
Yeah.
There's really no way to do that, because if I were running Bernie Sanders' campaign and I wanted to trash Joe Biden, in 2 weeks, Joe Biden will be finished. I would say, you black people gonna vote for Joe Biden because he liked Obama? Let me tell you what he said about Obama. You black women are voting for Joe Biden because he support black people so much? Let me show you what he did to Anita Hill. You want us to walk you through Joseph R. Biden from Delaware, who he takes 3 votes to be a senator and ain't never won no primary in his life before the other night? I'm gonna walk you through, I'm gonna dog walk Joe Biden through this whole thing. But Bernie Sanders, I don't think he's gonna do that. I don't think Nina Turner would do that. I don't think Bree Jordan would do that. If they wanna be competitive, I don't see a path to them being competitive if they're not going to fight. And I don't know that they're going to answer that question, do you want to be pure or do you want to win, with I want to win. I think they'll stick with I'll be closer to pure.
And I agree. I don't think that they're going to go scorched earth as they can directly. Now, be clear, on social media, all that's happening. If you look at all of Bernie-aligned
but it's not
outlets,
them.
but it's not them. So to their credit, I agree, because one thing I think we can agree on, Donald Trump is not going to pull any punches whatsoever.
Donald Trump's
he has
a liar,
no problem
a sexual predator.
saying that.
He's just going to say whatever it takes.
Yes.
No
so
question.
there is a little bit of a gentleman's agreement in terms of, you know, we're not going to go that far because Bernie Sanders has problematic stuff as well.
Like what?
Okay, about this. You know what? I'm not gonna go there because I'm not Team Joe and I'm not Team Bernie.
No, go ahead and say it.
Yeah,
That's why we're here.
Yeah, no question.
To discuss these things.
Well, I mean, you talk about how Bernie Sanders has kind of perpetuated this misconception or misstatement about the fact that he only voted for the crime bill because of the Violence Against Women Act.
Okay.
That is unequivocally false if you listen to what Bernie Sanders has said. He did a press conference in Vermont where he's talking about the virtues of the crime bill. This is not on the Senate floor because they like to, or the House floor, sorry. They like to show his speech about that, but then they don't show this press conference. In this press conference, he says, do I think we need more jails? Yeah. Do I think we need more cops?
Biden can't live in that glass house and throw a rock.
So
agree. I mean, on that one,
I agree with you.
Yeah. But that is a good point.
But that is my point.
Yeah.
When you talk about, aren't most drug dealers African Americans black? Are drug dealers African American? You know, that was a comment he made in 2016 when he was talking to black activists and they tried to correct him on the spot. And he still was like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And then you also talk about how he said recently, well, I didn't realize that we had a big criminal justice system, criminal justice reform problem. So Bernie Sanders has a lot of, he said that recently within the last couple of weeks.
The case, I think.
Well, but listen, I'm not saying, I don't have an encyclopedia of it. But what I'm saying is that to a certain extent, they have a gentleman's agreement because Bernie Sanders is not this clean person, and I don't mean clean, but I mean, he has his baggage as well. Biden has his baggage. Bernie has to figure out how to expand his base. I think he looks like a total hypocrite, but luckily for him, not everybody knows how much he dislikes Obama, how much he's trashed Obama, and so to the extent that people are low information voters and they don't know the disdain that Bernie Sanders has, perhaps this might give him a little bit of, from Obama, that might give him a bit of...
Greg, final comment.
Well, I remember the election in 1980 when Kennedy was deciding, it was 80 or 76, when he ran against Carter. He was going to run against Carter. This whole idea that the Democrats will ultimately divide over intellectual purity, whether it be a Democrat like Kennedy or whether it be an independent like Sanders. They've got to decide between now and November how they're going to beat Donald Trump.
Yep.
And what is very clear, finally, is that when you look, looking on your set, we were talking about the other night, Lenore Fulani, who ran for president, Shirley Chisholm, who ran for president, Stacey Abrams, who may one day run for president. If past is prelude, when you look at how the Democratic Party treated Shirley Chisholm, when you look at how the voters treated Lenore Fulani when she ran her insurgent campaign, what's happening to Bernie Sanders now have deep roots in American politics, and it's usually the Democrats that do this kind of thing.
All right, folks, this morning the Black Women's Roundtable, along with members of the CDC, held a news conference to talk about leveraging the political power of black women at the polls. We live streamed that news conference. You can watch the full news conference on our YouTube channel, but here is some of what they had to say.
So we're going to do our part. We're going to walk these halls today and let them know we're here, right? And we demand that they get them things out of the graveyard on the Senate side, because the House is taking care of business.
This year, we celebrate the centennial of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. We know it was a little bit delayed for us, sisters, but we are in the fight today. In the same spirit, we must celebrate our brave ancestors who sacrificed their lives to ensure that the black community was not left behind when it came to the right to vote. The right to vote is our power, and that must not be taken for granted. The ratification of the 19th Amendment was critical in securing the American women's opportunity to exercise their full rights as citizens, from voting rights to health care, to social justice, to domestic violence, and more. Black women have always fought to ensure that the sisters who look like us aren't left behind. Our vote and our voices matter.
And in 2020, no one can deny the role of the black woman in this country. Am I right? Because we are at the forefront of change. We always have been. The only thing that is new is that no one can deny it now. And we are going to continue to be at the forefront of change until we get rid of who? 45. We are going to continue to do that because we need to change our country.
The history of parchment is very important in this conversation. In 180 years, 180 years of our people being in bondage there, because Parchment Prison, when it closed down as a slave plantation, it opened up as a prison. So they have had black bodies there oppressed on that land, 28 square miles. 28 square miles. This is a large place. When we travel to Parchment, you can't even see the buildings where the prisoners actually are being held, because it is like literally a major campus of people who are locked up there. Well, some people want to know, because this is a male prison, it used to be a women's prison, but it has now since been closed down, and people want to know, why should I be coming here to speak to you all about a male prison? Why should we care? Well, we care about our brothers, don't we? Our brothers matter to us. Our fathers matter. Our sons matter. Our family matters. The black woman and black household we need our men to be strong and to be safe.
Black women, we get it done, right? Yes. Black women, we get the work done. Yes. And so we are standing here with a black women's agenda, and at the top of our agenda, it is ending voter suppression. When you look at what happened just this Tuesday, where you got black folks in line in Texas for 7 hours, that is unacceptable. In the wealthiest country in the world, is unacceptable. But we thank you. We are fighting. We know that when we stand together, what we do, we win.
Again, folks, you can go to our YouTube channel to see the full news conference right there because we live stream it. And also the Black Women's Roundtable, their conference began today, and we'll be live streaming it all weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So simply go to our Periscope, Facebook, and YouTube channels as well. Be sure to subscribe, click on turn on your notifications so you'll be able to see when we go live. Coming up next, we'll talk about a black man who may be put to death in Alabama tonight for killing 3 cops that he didn't kill. That's next to Roland Martin Unfiltered. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. All right, folks, 11th hour push to halt the execution of a black man in Alabama remains ongoing, with activists calling on Alabama Governor Kay Ivey to intervene. 44-year-old Nathaniel Woods is set to die tonight by lethal injection. He'll be the first person scheduled to be executed in Alabama this year, and the 67th in the state since capital punishment was reinstated by the Supreme Court in 1976. Now, family members, supporters, and a co-defendant who was convicted of murder in the same case of killing 3 police officers said that he was not the one who fired the weapon that killed 3 Birmingham police officers at a drug house in 2004. And he had already given up before the shooting began. So why in the world was he convicted of murdering the 3 cops? Joining me now with the latest on this case is Robert Dunham. He's the executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center here in D.C. Robert, this is, I mean, you have the guy who they know pulled the trigger.
That's right.
Who was found guilty, who was on death row.
That's correct.
He admits, I'm the one who did it.
That's right.
This guy, Nathaniel, had already surrendered. Yet he's going to get executed for murdering 3 cops that he was not involved in. I'm sorry, what's missing here?
You've just described the controversy. Okay. What's missing here from the perspective of the prosecution is they claim that Nathaniel Woods set up the cops to be shot. You could say it's a he said, she said, but we all know what the history of law enforcement in Alabama has been. The backstory is that the officers have been accused of conducting shakedowns. And the person who owned the house, it was a known drug house. The person who owned the house was involved in drug sales and was paying protection. Apparently the cost for protection went up. He didn't want to pay it. And Nathaniel Woods and Carrie Spencer were also in the house. And Nathaniel Woods lived there. When the cops came for their payment, Spencer wasn't, the homeowner wasn't there. Spencer was asleep on the sofa. Carrie Spencer and Nathaniel Woods was in the house, and he got into an argument with
Now, did all this come out in the trial?
No.
So where's the information coming from that these cops were basically getting kickbacks?
Well, that was in an investigation that was done far afterwards. What happened at the time of trial was that both Spencer, who admits to having been the shooter, and Mr. Woods were represented by the same person during the early investigation. That's a
hold up. The guy who pulled the trigger was also representing the guy who didn't pull the trigger.
That is correct.
Okay.
That would be a conflict.
Right. I mean, yes, absolutely.
Okay. And so shortly before trial, Spencer gets a new lawyer. Shortly before trial, the lawyer who is representing Woods is no longer representing Spencer, but hasn't conducted the investigation that ought to have been conducted. So ultimately, when it comes to trial, we have testimony from the police officers saying that that Woods hated police officers. They admit that he wasn't the shooter, but they say that he planned this thing and lured them into the house, and that then Spencer shot them. What happens afterwards is that Woods gets appointed, Woods' trial lawyer doesn't file his appeal, blows the time limit, And he goes into what's called the post-conviction
His
stage.
lawyer does not file an appeal in the case where he was given the death penalty.
That's right.
That's like automatic and basic.
And then you go on and you get new lawyers appointed in what's called the post-conviction stage. That's a stage where you're supposed to raise all the issues that weren't raised before, and you've got to conduct an investigation and so forth. Well, virtually nothing happens at that stage either. And so there's not a reinvestigation. This other information never comes out, and he loses in state court. The federal judge then appoints that same lawyer to represent him in federal court, where there's another obvious conflict, because you cannot argue about your own ineffectiveness. You know, you can't say, I didn't do this.
And that's their argument, is ineffective counsel.
That's right. So now what happens is he loses in federal court.
1 second. Breaking news. Apparently, there's been a stay from the Supreme Court.
Oh, good.
In this case.
Now, what we have to be careful about here, there are two types of stays that can issue.
I'm looking it up right now. Go ahead, explain it.
Because it may well be, Alabama had not said that they were going to put off the execution unless there was an actual stay in place. If it's a stay from the circuit justice, it will be a temporary stay until the court rules. If it is a permanent stay, then they will issue an order and they'll indicate.
It is a temporary stay.
It's temporary.
5:38 p.m. U.S. Supreme Court has issued a temporary stay of execution for Woods. That stay is in place until further orders from the nation's high court.
Okay. So this is unfortunately something that's routine. So we have a petition that's currently pending before the U.S. Supreme Court. When I walked over to your offices for this appearance, there was still litigation pending in the Federal Court of Appeals in Atlanta.
11th Circuit?
Yeah, 11th Circuit. And that also is going to be on its way to the United States Supreme Court.
So at 5, so I'm looking at the timeline here. So at 5:30 p.m., the 11th Circuit denied his request for a stay of execution.
Okay.
And the quote was, and I'm reading here, it says, yet Wood inexplicably waited almost 1 year after the grant, months after the argument, more than a month after his execution was set, and until the day of his scheduled execution to seek authorization for a second or successive petition and to ask for a stay. The equities strongly disfavor such abusive tactics. That was written by the 11th Circuit Judge Bill Pryor, former Alabama Attorney General.
That's right.
The Attorney General in the case.
No, the former.
The former Attorney General, who I believe was in office during.
And the 11th Circuit is the latest one the Trump administration just flipped with the latest federal appointee in a couple of weeks ago. I wonder what the number was on the ruling.
Well, this is a 3-judge panel.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it wasn't the full circuit.
They were, yeah.
Right. But this is all part and parcel of what the problem is, because you have the same folks being appointed at multiple stages, and they're listening to the same folks that they've.
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, if this guy was the Attorney General, when his he should have recused himself from this case.
Right. If he had any involvement in it, yes.
Yeah, he should. Well, I mean, but the fact of the matter, that's
at best there's an appearance of a conflict.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
Again, the thing that bothers me greatly when we see these cases again, and let's just be real honest, when you have cases where officers have been shot and killed, prosecutors, they want to convict everybody. And this was a case where, oh, no, forget that. We taking everybody out. I don't understand how, as a DA, and this is why we talk about why you got to have people who are progressive running for district attorney, who says, wait a minute, you did not pull the trigger. This guy clearly pulls the trigger. Look, I could try this guy for something else, but not putting a person to death who had no involvement in a shooting.
Well, this looks more like a death penalty looking for a defendant, as opposed to reasonable assertion of law enforcement authority. And you know what we've heard, and which no court has ever ruled on, is that Mr. Wood, the police and prosecutors went to Mr. Wood's girlfriend to extract testimony that he hated the police and use that as saying that he set the cops up to be shot. And She later said, although no court has ever ruled on it because Mr. Woods never got an evidentiary hearing in the state courts when his prior lawyers attempted to raise this, she said that that statement was a product of coercion. And we all know that coercion is not surprising in this kind of police case.
Especially if you got warrants out, they'll try all kind of different things on this. Well, certainly there are a lot of entertainers and others who've been raising the issue as well, raising the profile. We'll certainly see what happens next. Robert, we're going to keep covering this story and certainly look forward to having you back as we try to, hopefully, this Supreme Court will see the light. We know Clarence Thomas won't. But hopefully the Supreme Court will see the light and say, this just makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, I'm happy to come back. I do know one other thing, that just when I left the office, I received word that Governor Ivey still hasn't decided whether she is going to grant a commutation.
Folks, the number you should call to weigh in to Governor Kay Ivey is 334-605-8572. Again, the number to the Alabama Governor Kay Ivey, her office number is 334-605-8572. We certainly want you guys to call and weigh in. Robert Dunham, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
Going to a break. We come back. We're going to talk about a massacre in Florida that should be a part of the history books for our legislature wants it to happen. We'll talk with one of them next on Roland Martin Unfiltered. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. All right, folks, the Florida Senate is about to pass a bill to make more Floridians aware of a Election Day riot in 1920. The bill is sponsored by Democratic Senator Randolph Bracey. It would direct the Education Commissioner's African American History Task Force to recommend ways the history of that massacre can be taught in schools. Now, the violence started before the November election in 1920 because the KKK Grand Master of Florida sent a threatening letter to a politician who was registering African Americans to vote. A white mob lynched Julius July Perry as a result of his effort. Joining me to give the rest of the details is the author of this bill, Senator Randolph Lacey. So Senator Lacey, I'm just trying to understand, why do you have to have a bill to put something in the history books or to be taught in Florida classroom? Don't you have a State Board of Education?
We do, and it's Senator Bracey. Thank you, Roland.
Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, you would think this history would be taught. I just think that this incident has been lost in our history books. To this day, it's still the bloodiest day in modern American political history because it happened on Election Day. It's estimated some 60 people were killed. Obviously, July Perry was lynched for his organizing efforts. And another instance that's not really told about this story is that July Perry was a very wealthy man. He had a considerable amount of land. Most consider him the wealthiest man in this time. He owned cars, and for black men in 1920, was very just a big thing. And so the fact that he now had the audacity to organize and register people to vote, that was just too much in that time, and that's what got him lynched. And the whole town, the black part of that town, was burned down. But the story is just lost, and so I thought it was important to put it in statute. But another part of this bill that was taken out, but is still being negotiated, there was a reparations piece to it. And so that really was the crux of the bill. That portion of the bill is still being discussed and negotiated in the final weeks of our legislative session.
You said the reparations piece, and who would that benefit?
So it would go to the descendants of the massacre. And but the negotiations are we going to do it? That's what the original iteration of the bill did. But now we're talking about doing scholarships for the descendants.
Okay. And what was the reaction to that piece? I mean, is that really why it's being held up?
Well, It could be. I think there's sometimes a reluctance to talk about this. It's not being held up in the Senate. We just passed it on our Senate floor today. And now we're waiting on the House, it hasn't had a hearing yet in the House. And so we're trying to negotiate the monetary piece, but also the language, where we're looking to amend some language to send over to the House and see what they do with it. But I think that can be a piece, a part of it as to why they don't want to hear it. But your guess is as good as mine.
You talked about, again, folks not knowing about this. This is one of the issues that we see all across the country, where things have happened and you have had white folks who purposely don't want other folks to know about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it is sometimes. But I must say to my colleagues in the Senate, that hasn't been the case. I approached the Senate president in this summer before our legislative session started. I knew we were approaching the 100th year anniversary of this tragedy, and so I thought it was important to highlight it and to do something in the 100th year. And so once he became aware of the story, he was all for telling the story and memorializing the event in our statutes. And so it will be propagating the history in museums. We're looking for naming opportunities of schools in this state. And so we really want to just memorialize the event, and teach it in our schools, but also look to reparations. I think this opens up a conversation about reparations, where I just think we need to have a serious conversation about it, because not only are we talking about the generational trauma that was inflicted on the people of Ocoee, but we're talking about land theft, government-sponsored land theft. The state played a role in this massacre. The state didn't do a proper investigation. Our state courts conspired to transfer the property to members of the mob after the massacre. And so there was so much that the state played a part in it. And so how do you not consider monetary reparations? And so I'm glad that we've gone this far.
Do the descendants have any legal claim against the state for being, this is state-sanctioned action?
Yeah, I mean, I think because of the statute of limitations, it would be difficult. And so
hold up, is there a statute of limitations against theft of land?
You know, I've talked to some legal experts, and I believe that there is. I mean, it's debatable, but I think the legal framework would just be difficult to do. And so the recourse of action is legislative.
But see, this is the piece to me where, look, I get it, but to hell with scholarships. Because the reality is land is land. Land is tangible. Land is real. And I think, I get compromise and need to get something passed, but the reality is getting a scholarship, I can't pass down. Getting a piece of land, I can pass it down.
Right.
That's wealth. I mean, that land, that's wealth.
Yeah, yeah. You know, what's interesting, Roland, is that when I filed this bill, there were people that reached out to me across the state. You need to look at what they call the Newberry Six in Newberry, Florida, or in Perry, Florida, there was a lynching. And what was interesting about these stories, there was the same common theme. You had blacks that had substantial wealth at that time, and the massacre, you would always see an arbitrary story of like a black man supposedly stole a pig, and then all of a sudden his property is transferred after they're lynched. And so what really is at the crux of these issues, like in Ocoee, it's a voter suppression thing because he was organizing people to vote. But the real backstory is it was land theft, state-sponsored land theft.
But the history of that, Julianne Malveaux is always on here talking about that. That's what Ida B. Wells Barnett was writing about. When she was covering those lynchings, in nearly every case, what you were dealing with wasn't a white man whistling at a white woman. It was white folks being angry about black people having the audacity to make money. And so it happened in Memphis. It happened in Tulsa. And so, again, I guess the issue for me is when you have state-sanctioned involvement, there should be action being targeted against the state for that, because the wealth in America, when you talk about the wealth gap in America, the wealth gap in America is not because of education. It's because of inheritance. Right. That's why there is a wealth gap. Most wealth in America is passed down through inheritance. And when you don't have the capacity to pass down land, and all you pass it down is a plate or a bowl or an heirloom that you can't sell, that's why you're dealing with the wealth gap in this country. And so I think it's for the people, and I understand, look, I get it, who are saying, hey, scholarship for the descendants, but I look at Georgetown University. Georgetown University does not stand today unless those slaves were sold.
Yeah.
They were property.
Yep.
So what does Georgetown say? We're going to give scholarships. No. Damn that. How about some of your endowment?
Right.
Final comment. Go ahead.
I agree. Well, and that's why I started with a $25 million payment to descendants. The reality is, I don't think this country is ready for reparations. I mean, but it's what I am proud of, though, is that we had the debate on the floor, and it's serious consideration to some monetary payments. And so this is further than we've ever been before in a southern state like Florida, which has, its own bad history when it comes to racial violence. And so I think it's a step forward. And I'm proud of my fellow senators for having this conversation. Senator
Randolph Bracey of Florida, we surely appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, then. Greg, this is, so here's the piece. So I'm going to make a distinction when I talk about reparations, because there are multiple ways you can have reparations discussion. When the black men in Chicago who were beaten by John Burge, the city of Chicago paid reparations. Yeah. It wasn't just a police settlement. That's right. It was education. It was actual direct payment. It was a number of things, and they actually called it that. The folks in Tulsa, you have direct descendants. There are people who are still alive. Okay, I think maybe there's one or two who are still living. Yes. But I remember covering this when Charles Ogletree, Willie Gary, Johnny Cochran, and others were representing them. That's right. I met them at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, AOC. And so you had direct descendants. When you talk about some of these other things that have happened, if you are an African American who was denied housing opportunities with the Fair Housing Act, you're still living. You are a direct beneficiary, or should be a direct beneficiary of that sanctioned racism by the federal government. See, what happens is whenever there's a reparations conversation, many people want to revert back to slavery. Right. And I'll say this here. You can't build an argument of reparations for slavery if you skip over Jim Crow. No. So again, for the people who are watching, if you say this is 2020, and all through here is, let's say, American history going all the way back to 1863. Well, if you want to have the 1863 conversation in 2020, you're going to get blown out of the water. I'm just being straight up. That's why you have never seen anything result in reparations. But if you're able to say, no. This happened in 1920. This is 100 years. This happened in 1947. This happened in 1954. This happened in 1965. There are people who are still living who were impacted by those racist state and federal policies. That's right. That, to me, should be how an approach is taken, because now you actually are able to make an extremely direct connection, because a lot of people who talk about reparations themselves can't make a direct connection to folks who were in slavery. They assume they had ancestors who were enslaved, but they don't actually know.
That's right. That's right. No, Roland, first of all, really respect Senator Bracey and his colleagues, particularly this young brother, because this massacre, the Ocoee massacre, stands alongside what happened in Wilmington, North Carolina. I mean, 1920 was the passage of the 19th Amendment. Did white women had the right to vote? As we heard the sisters on the steps there, they were trying to stop black people from voting as well, because the two brothers who were the main property owners were paying people's poll taxes. They were down there and said, we're going to vote. And it all connects directly, as you say. This is an unbroken line from enslavement to Jim Crow to redlining and everything forward. And the political violence of 1920. And I'm so glad you brought up our brothers, Charles Ogletree, Willie Gary, and them, because they were able to advance a legal theory in Tulsa that resulted in reparations. And I think that, there's some coordination between this. But I want to mention this because we're actually in the week, I guess this will be the 163rd anniversary this week of Roger Taney's Dred Scott decision. And the reason I bring it up is because Barbara Lee, who stood there on the steps a minute ago, as you covered, and talked about why we need to empower ourselves politically, Barbara Lee has drafted some legislation that is truly remarkable on this very subject. She's calling for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And in that Truth and Reconciliation Commission, you get an accounting of this kind of thing. When you pair that with the Emmett Till legislation that just passed, that makes lynching a federal crime. And of course, 2 years after the Ocoee massacre, you have in 1922, the first time they tried to introduce anti-lynching legislation, Senator Dyer, the Dyer Anti-Lynching Act that Ida Wells and them supported. But when you pair this with the Emmett Till bill, and you pair it with H.R. 40, I was in Selma last Friday, we're having this conversation, which talks about reparations. There is a legal theory to engage in reparations in the way that you say, with this unbroken line of slavery and its aftermath. And it all comes back to this one thing that you say over and over again, that we discuss over and over again. That's why we have to be involved in the political process. No Senator Bracey, no bill. No Barbara Lee, no bill. No Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, no anti-lynching legislation.
See, that's why, Reese, for me, I thought it was utterly idiotic when the ADOS people were saying, no this, no vote. And I'm going, so please tell me how in the hell you think you're going to get it.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean,
you kind of, this notion that you're going to achieve things after the political process is utterly ridiculous, because you need allies to actually make it happen. And then if I have to step back and examine this nation, there are really only two parties.
Right.
So if this party over here ain't even gonna talk to me, then it's okay, well, I'm probably gonna get it through this party, which means versus attacking the people on this side,
right,
I gotta figure out how to get them to the understanding. And what I'm laying out is, if you're able to craft, see, I'm all about wins.
Right.
Yes, sir.
See, you have to build successive wins to get to your ultimate prize.
Right.
So if you're able to, that win in Chicago, that win in Tulsa, that win here in Florida, if you're able to achieve wins, now, again, people who also need to understand how you build a legal argument, you now all of a sudden, as you continue to go down that path, you now have created a body of judicial evidence that when you stand before judges, you can point to say, well, this just happened in Florida, this happened in Tulsa, this happened in Memphis, this happened here. And so now all of a sudden, you now are not just out there just advancing a theory, you are advancing what actually has been proven and used to be able to show cause and effect and how you can actually have remedy the damages.
Right. I think that's the problem, that we don't have people that are making the connection. Sometimes you see something like that and they're like, well, how come they got it and I ain't got it? Why not try to figure out how to weave all these things together? I mean, if you go back to Senator Kamala Harris, She has written many amicus briefs to the Supreme Court. She's written legislation. She advanced. It was called something different in the Senate, but the anti-lynching legislation. She led on that. And so you had a person who had the legal scholarship. She had the legal practice. She had the executive experience, and she had the legislative experience that had the Black agenda. And yet that person was dogged out. And so we need people like Senator Lacey down in Florida, who is putting this stuff on the table. You may not get that win right away, but you got to start the conversation. And some people are like, I don't want to have a conversation. I don't want a commission. I just want that.
Right.
They don't understand the point that you laid out about you have to develop the framework.
Right.
Nobody's just going to cut a check because you're on Twitter saying no Black agenda, no vote.
They also don't understand that if you actually take the time to go back and study Brown versus Board of Education, that was not that didn't just happen. I mean, what Charles Hamilton was able to do, that was understanding peace, 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 peace,
right.
Grouping here. That's why they were like, no, we're not going to pursue it over there. And that's also why people don't understand why really smart civil rights lawyers are very careful. If you go back and look at the movie Battle of the Sexes, not Battle of the Sexes, Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, yeah.
The movie that was just there.
Okay.
Yeah. When the guy with the ACLU was like, no, we don't want that case to go to the court yet.
Right.
And see, again, people have to understand you have to build to that. You have to build this framework. You have to build to and create sort of this whole again, like you say, if you use a building, I got to build this base of the building for everything else to stand on. But if I try to build this on a shaky case, then the case gets thrown out and it crumbles, well, everything else falls with it.
It sets a precedent.
Right, and I think that's the case here. So again, I would hope people understand that this is how you isolate this. And so when you had the presidential campaign, when you had Senator Elizabeth Warren, who was talking about fair housing, the fair housing law, and how Black people were discriminated because of that law, she made the connection talking about present day housing.
That's right.
In that particular law.
That's right.
And why you must have a remedy, because she's like, no, there are people who were impacted by that law who are still living.
That's right.
Who are literally still living, and they were discriminated against because of that, and that has a direct impact on wealth.
That's right.
And a lot of people really don't get that. All right, y'all, police are investigating an arrest that was captured by a bystander in a pair of videos in Brooklyn. First of all, I'm warning you right now, for any folks that's a trigger, that this is a shocking video to see. This took place on Wednesday night, which showed a man apparently getting assaulted by several cops and arrested for allegedly smoking weed in a park. Here's what happened.
Ask if you being detained, bro.
I did not commit a crime.
Ask if you being detained.
He just said, come over. He followed me and said, come over here real quick. I'm like, what? Who are you? What crime did I commit? Stop moving. You about to shoot me? Stop moving. I don't have a crime. I don't have a weapon on me. What crime did I commit? You're supposed to do that. That's the law. That's the law. You say you keep your dog. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so here's what I'm gonna bail out of this video because we have 1 minute and 38 seconds. I want you to see the full 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Because in that video there, you see all the police lights in terms of where they're coming. No. I want you to see and listen to what took place before the police lights showed up so you can understand how long this took place and listen to the pleadings of this brother. Go to my iPad.
I'm recording. I'm watching. Yo, bro, stay still. Oh, bro.
What crime did I commit? Look, you gotta hurt me. You gotta hurt me. What did I do? What did I do? What did I do? I did not do anything. He saw me in the park and he came out the car and followed me. Why are you following me? Can you answer my question? Look me in my eyes. I'm talking to you. You're not moving. Why are you panicking? You're pulling out your weapon. I'm happy to be on me. I just came from work. What's the problem? Look in my eyes. I'm talking to you.
if you being detained, bro.
I did not commit a crime.
Ask if you being
He
detained.
just said, come over. He followed me and said, come over here real quick. I'm like, what? Who are you? What crime did I commit? Stop moving. You about to shoot me? Stop with the taser? I don't have a crime. I don't have a weapon on me. What crime did I commit? You're supposed to do that. That's the law. That's the law. You see, you keep your dog. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying, sir, I know, I did not commit a crime. I did not commit a crime. I'm moving, son. I did not commit a crime. I did not commit any 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 crime. Calm down.
Look, she coming now. You see how she coming? She running in.
Bro, he wasn't even resisting any shit.
Oh my God.
The man in the video is 20-year-old Fritz Rogel. He was on his way home from his second job when his mother called and asked him to pick up a few items from the store. Police, now you heard him in the video say, why am I being detained? What am I being arrested for? Cop wouldn't tell him. Later, they say he was arrested for smoking marijuana. Greg.
It's very basic. Every last one of those punk cops should lose their job. This young man, his mother, his family should be able to take the millions they should sue the city for and invest them however kind of thing they want. Because this is why black people not only don't trust the police, but hate the police. This is why police who risk their lives every day have their lives endangered. Because of mute, punk men like that punk that stood there mute as this young man said, what did I do? And thank God that the sister had the camera on him, because the lies they would have spun about this young boy would probably make us all blanch. And then these other cowboys come running up. They're going to run up on the right one day. And unfortunately, I don't wish violence on any human being in the world, but I promise you, seeing things like this, it reminds me finally of the memorial in Montgomery. I'm tired of looking at memorials to our trauma. We go back to Ocoee for a minute. When these white boys first rolled up on these brothers who were paying the poll tax, 3 of them got shot and killed in the yard. Because them brothers is like, we're going to die, let us nobly die. I want a list of every cop that get their ass beat when they run up on somebody like that. That's the memorial I want to see. Because this right here is not going to end till we end it.
I mean, it's traumatizing to watch that. You know, it's like, it's inexcusable. It's disgusting. And here's the kicker about all these things. Every single case, even when you look at the Alton Sterlings and all of these folks, Sandra Bland, everybody. I mean, she didn't get brutalized like this, but I'm just saying, it starts from what? The response is never proportional. I mean, even if he was smoking weed, so fucking what?
How about that?
Does that require all of the cavalry coming down and brutalizing this man? No. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And people just do it because they don't have anything else better to do and they think they can get away with it. I agree with you. Yeah. They need to sue the hell out of those people. Mayor Bill de Blasio needs to get his ass off of Morning Joe, and he needs to be accounting for this shit instead of being on Morning Joe being Bernie Sanders' sorry.
He was charged with marijuana possession.
He was charged?
Resisting arrest and obstructing governmental administration.
Wow.
I mean, this is...
Yeah, that's how they do it. That's how they do it.
Yeah.
This is exactly what I can tell you. I'm going to pull this up in a second. I can tell you when I saw the video this morning, let me see what time. I did reach out to, at 8:19 this morning, I did send a text to Mayor de Blasio, specifically asking about this. Let me pull up the tweet that he posted 3 hours ago. He spoke on this issue. See if I can pull it up here. I was just on my phone seeing the tweet. You know, the thing that is still stunning to me You needed that many cops to take down somebody who was smoking weed?
Yeah. Well, you need that many because these are not men. These are pieces of human beings. In Senator Bland's case, it wasn't about anything she did. It was about that little weak, insecure piece of a man thinking he could exert control over a black woman's body. And when you see the mute look on that hapless puppet that had his hand in this boy's chest, look at the blank look on his face. And those that's a slur. Those enthusiastic cops running down the street, their manhood is strengthening with every step as they approach this black man, because this isn't about a violation. This is about you, sir, are under my control.
Yeah.
And until we have them understand that that is simply not the case. And de Blasio, of course, I agree with you wholeheartedly, but the cops have already declared that de Blasio's against them. Bill de Blasio with a black wife and black children, a black son who has been harassed by the police, who when he ran for office, the cops said, we're against this guy. Why? Because his son Dante talking about he was harassed by the police. You can't win against this gang. Tupac Shakur said, who's got the biggest gang of N-words in the city? The police. The gang in the street is the police. And if you are a cop listening to this and you mad at me, you can go to hell. And if you are a cop listening to me to say, I agree with you wholeheartedly, get your cousin. The blue wall must crumble because you are endangering the lives of every good cop out there. Every woman and man who does their duty and just wants to get home at night is endangered by this, because this young man asked, what did I do wrong? You run up on the white one, you get your brains blown out. And at that point, we can't defend that either. But these cops are running wild.
This was a tweet sent out by Mayor de Blasio. This was painful to watch. Go to my iPad. We still need to get all the facts about this case, and a full investigation is underway. But I don't like what I saw. It doesn't reflect what we're building in New York City. He then sends a second tweet. Neighborhood policing has brought police and communities together to drive crime down to record lows. It's saving lives and changing our city block by block. But obviously, there's work that still needs to be done.
It shouldn't be work to not fuck with black people.
How about that?
That's how hard is it? How hard is that?
Well, I mean, let me ask you both. What do you think the police union response to those tweets will be?
Oh, the police union is going to say, here you go again, not caring for us, not backing us. We're just trying to do our job. But when you look at that video there, I mean, here you have a cop who refuses to tell him why you're being detained. That's very simple. Sir, you were smoking marijuana. What you don't see in the video is the cop doing a check. What you also don't see, now he's pushing him and holding him. The cop by himself, I'm sorry, you could have handcuffed him yourself.
Yeah.
You could have said, sir, I observe you smoking marijuana. I'm going to handcuff you, ask you to stay calm. I'm going to search you. That's not what he did. He pushes them up against the wall, and he's waiting for the cavalry to come.
So they can beat
and they run like a posse. And you see it right there. Like, explain to me why at no point in this video that cop could not just say, sir, I observe you smoking marijuana.
Because he didn't.
And he also didn't say you're under arrest. The guy was specifically asking. So how are you resisting arrest if you want to tell him he's under arrest?
He pulls his taser out.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
At no point does he say it. Now, here's the question I have. Was that officer wearing a body camera? Will be able to actually see what transpired? I doubt it.
Yeah.
But that's just one of the things that.
But marijuana possession has been decriminalized in New York. That's a civil fine. In other words, you don't arrest people for marijuana, even if he had smell.
Right.
That blank-faced liar made that up, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But even had he not, even if he had seen the smoke coming out his mouth, it's a civil violation. It's a fine. You don't arrest people for that.
And you don't beat them, stomp on them,
Hell no.
punch them as well.
No,
Roland, to the point you raised earlier, just one other thing. When you keep telling folks about prosecutors, it's going to be the attorney in charge, district attorney, where is going to have to make the decision whether or not to charge on this.
Right.
Do you think this is going to make it to a charge?
Oh, no. I think these charges are going to get kicked real fast.
Yeah.
They're going to get kicked.
But it still is, you're still in the system. You still have a target. The fact that that woman, I'm actually afraid for her because
no question.
Look at what happened.
The guy who brought the Eric Garner case.
Yes, thank
went
you.
to prison.
That's right.
Exactly.
Folks, in Prince George's County, police officer Corporal Michael Owen Jr. was indicted today on charges that he murdered William Howard Green in Temple Hills, who was in his custody in January. The charges were second-degree murder, manslaughter, assault, use of a handgun, and misconduct in office. Police said they received a call about a traffic accident. Officers found the suspected driver, Green, asleep in his car nearby. They believe he was under the influence. They removed him from his car, handcuffed him behind his back, and put him in the front passenger seat of Owen's cruiser as they waited for a drug recognition expert to arrive. Owen sat in the driver's seat next to Green. Green was handcuffed when he was shot, but did not have a seatbelt on. Top prosecutor Aisha Braveboy has promised a fair trial. We'll see on top of this story. This is also what happens when you have a black district attorney.
Yes, ma'am.
It's also the case.
Yes.
Y'all know what time it is.
No charcoal grills are allowed.
I'm white. I got you, Carl.
Illegally selling water without a permit on my property.
Whoa! Hey! You don't live here.
I'm uncomfortable.
Indiana Olive Garden says that it is investigating an alleged incident at one of its restaurants in which a crazy-ass white woman demanded to be assigned a non-black server. Hostess Amira Donahue tells local news station WEHT that she personally witnessed a customer who was screaming at her manager about not wanting to be served by black employees, and that the manager eventually complied with her request.
But she asked for a server that wasn't black, and the manager complied. And I do agree that that was a bad decision at the moment, but there was a better way that could have been handled. And the lady also made comments about me to my other coworkers, saying that I'm not family friendly, that I should go work at a strip club instead of an Olive Garden, that am I even black, like am I from here, am I from America, just like offhand comments like that, and referring me to like the other one. Like, it's 2020, not 1920. We should be over this. Something should have been done, and I feel like it should take more than just social media to get a problem like this out there.
Rishi, this is real simple. Man, we're not serving you.
Exactly. I mean, if you go to any liquor store in Compton, you're going to see a huge sign. We reserve the right to refuse service to anybody. They need some of that damn energy in Olive Garden, because there's no reason why that lady should have been able to eat in that restaurant.
Right.
Period.
Man, this is the world we have always lived in. But this current political climate has loosed these people to lose their...
Oh, unleash them.
That's fine. And first of all, you're dealing with somebody serving your food. Now, my
play
mama
like
told
that.
me, do not mess with people who going somewhere you can't see and bring you something to eat.
But that's their arrogance. That's their arrogance.
Yes. Unbelievable.
Nope. I'm like, no. So if I'm Olive Garden, manager got to go.
Yeah.
Because the manager has to say, ma'am, we don't want your money.
Exactly.
That's right.
You will not dictate to us who serves your food.
That's right.
You are more than welcome to leave. And then if you don't leave, I will call the cops on you because you're trespassing.
Exactly.
I mean, y'all call the cops on black people for selling lemonade.
Come on now.
Right.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. All right, folks, we got to go. Folks, well, first of all, the manager was fired by Olive Garden. He did get fired. Y'all might want to put that in the script. I'm just saying. But let it also be a lesson. Again, and I keep telling y'all, please keep shooting video as well, because every time one of these white folks lose their mind, we want to be able to run it. And when somebody gets fired, we should go apply for the job. So any African American in that Indiana city, please go apply for that manager's job. I keep telling y'all, white folks are going to purposely end black unemployment because they keep acting a fool. I'm just saying. All right, folks, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Don't forget to support us at Roland Martin Unfiltered by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal, of course, is to be independent, to be free, to be under no corporate influence, to be able to do the stories that we want to do, to speak honestly and openly. As I said, we've been covering, of course, the Black Women's Roundtable. Their conference starts this weekend. Black Girl Magic, their Black Women's Conference, also starts this weekend at the Kennedy Center. And so we have our cameras covering all of those different events. So it's going to be sisters all over D.C. this weekend, just letting y'all know. Who are all politically inclined. And so we certainly will be covering that. This is why we do what we do, so we don't have to ask anybody else. It's about not asking permission and asking, of course, somebody else to control the narrative. Because I can tell you right now, you're not going to see Senator Randolph Bracey on cable news networks. They're all caught up in Donald Trump and Biden and Sanders. You're not going to see those stories. And then when you talk about the story of the brother in Alabama, you might see them cover it, but they'll focus on the angle of T.I. and others who are weighing in on it. And so we've got to have spaces where we're able to speak to our issues and have our guests talking about them. And that's why we do what we do, but we need your support. Your dollars matter. Our goal is very simple. If 20,000 of our followers gave $50 each for the whole year, that's it, 20,000. $4.19 a month. 13 cents a day. That will completely fund our whole show. Completely. That's everything. That's everything that we do, we completely fund it. That's what we have to do and in order to do it. And so you're not being served well by cable interest? Fine. Cut your cable. Watch us. Send those dollars here. You probably spend $150 a month with them. And what are you getting? All I'm saying. All right, folks. Y'all have an absolute great day. I'll see you tomorrow.